So many thanks from my part also to Maria, to all the organizers. I'm very happy to be with you again, even if I have left ESPON and joined, if you like, the blue growth part, the DG Mare, because I'm part of the assistance mechanism on MSP. We assist the DG Mare on maritime special planning issues. So I am always in Europe, but excuse me, but I cannot change my, how can I, okay. So just a few words about the culture, how it is viewed by the cohesion policy. Of course, it is at the core of Europe's rich heritage and history, and has an important role in enhancing the attractiveness of places and strengthening the unique identity of a specific location. Culture and creativity can be important drivers and enablers of innovation. Culture is a key driver for increasing tourism revenue, of course, with cultural tourism being one of the largest and fastest growing tourism segments worldwide, despite the COVID-19 interval, break, on my opinion. And culture also has an important role to play in promoting social inclusion. Sorry, but I don't know how to change my slide. Can you please help me?
I can do it, Stella. You just need to let me know when you want to change, okay?
Yeah, it's okay. Please change. Cultural heritage. What is cultural heritage? Everybody knows, of course, is an expression of the ways of living developed by a community and passed on from generation to generation, including customs, practices, places, objects, artistic expressions, and values. So it is both tangible and intangible. Next, please. Next slide, please. What we should keep in mind is that cultural heritage is a territorial asset, is really a part of the territorial capital of a city or region. And the cultural tourism is directly linked with CH. This tourism is gaining ground, and it accounts for 40% of all European tourism, since 4 out of 10 tourists choose their destination based on its cultural offering. Next, please. Well, this is mostly important because we have 3 approaches of cultural heritage management: the material-based approach, the value-based approach, and the living monument heritage approach. The 2 first are extremely important for our analysis. In the material-based approach, the conservation of heritage is in the hands of heritage authorities, mostly state appointed, and the local community is not taken into account. In the second approach, in the value-based approach, the community is placed at the core of conservation. Next, please. Now, I will try to link heritage. Yes.
Sorry, a moment. Please close the microphone because there is an echo.
Well, during past years, there has been a shift in the heritage discourse from the conservation-oriented approach, the material, to the value-oriented approach, meaning the acknowledgement of the value of cultural and natural heritage for various spheres of life. The London Declaration of the EC Conference on Sustainable Europe's Cultural Heritage stated that cultural heritage has a considerable impact in many areas of economic and regional development, sustainable tourism, among others. Consequently, cultural and natural heritage and sustainable tourism are closely linked. cultural and natural heritage has a positive impact on sustainable tourism, while tourism can be sustainable only if it includes more intimate interactions with the local culture and the local environment. Next, please. Next, please. Clara. Thank you.
It's next slide. You
As
can
far
see
as
it?
the natural capital, yes, of course. As far as the natural capital is concerned, it is crucial to say that it embraces natural resources, land and terrestrial and marine ecosystems, and is also essential for delivering ecosystem services that underpin our economy. And what is also important is shown in this scheme that that ecosystem services do not flow directly to men, to the humans, for their well-being, but they are embedded natural capital. There is also the social human capital and built capital that are embedded in the natural capital, and this comes indirectly. This flow is really, we need the natural capital in order to have this flow. Next, please. Next, please. Next slide, please. Clara. Okay.
We have the next slide.
Yeah. Concerning now the interactions between cultural and natural heritage and sustainable tourism, we can stress our interest on some points. The tourism potential of cultural and natural assets may support the conservation efforts. E.g., ecotourism can support biodiversity conservation, providing revenues for the management of Natura 2000 sites. Another thing is that nature and culture tourism are often interlinked, since usually tourists value both simultaneously, or they are closely situated. 62% of the World Heritage Sites in the EU are located either in or on the border of a Natura 2000 site, or to a walking distance. I'm sorry, but this is not my last version of the slides. Anyway, next, please. Why is there any? Also, our understanding of conservation is changing. That is, prior to the 60s, it was our meaning of conservation was around nature for itself. Over the turn of the century, we have nature despite people at the beginning, then nature for people, and the focus is no longer now on isolated reserve islands, not anymore on wilderness, if you like, in a landscape. Instead, we recognize that we need to create shared landscapes between people and nature, with a strong emphasis on maintaining ecological processes. And adaptability and resilience in these social ecological systems. This is very, very common now. We understand city, we understand territory as a social ecological system. And this has to do with also with resilience, which is one of the topics of my presentation. Next, please. Of course, there are spatial planning approaches, but I will go on. Next, please. Next slide, please. I don't see why there is no reaction. Okay, thank you. On the other hand, sorry, but this was not my last presentation. I had put another order. Sustainable tourism. What is sustainable tourism? It can be defined as the tourism that takes full account of its current and future economic, social, and environmental impacts, addressing the needs of visitors, the industry, the environment, and host communities. The World Tourism Organization emphasizes that sustainable tourism provides more meaningful connections with local people and a greater understanding of local cultural, social, and environmental issues. Next slide, please. Social ecological planning is an emerging discourse within the wider urban sustainability umbrella. It assumes that cities and territories are complex adaptive systems, and where resilience principles are a promising theoretical toolbox for improving planning. Synthesizing the literature on social ecological resilience, Biggs, Schluter, and Schoon put forth 7 principles for building resilience in social ecological systems. And the most important principles here are how managing slow variables, maintaining diversity, and managing connectivity. Next slide, please. Davudi, on her turn, says that such social ecological systems are organized assemblages of humans and non-human life forms made of biogeophysical and social systems, with the latter involving complex interrelationships of economic, cultural, institutional, and political order. They have developed, says Davudi, due to natural processes in continuous interaction with social and economic pressures, and are major sources of natural capital and biodiversity. They also provide a series of ecosystem services, including cultural ones, thus being sources of inspiration, cultural and recreational values that are important for human well-being and quality of life. You see here this connection between nature and culture, between social and the social system and the ecological system. Next, please. The main words, the main terms where Davudi bases its evolutionary resilience concept are the preparedness of the system, the adaptability of the system, and mainly the transformability of the system. Next, please. About the reconnection of culture, of nature and culture, during the Italian presidency in 2000. Have also conference together with Maria here in Athens. It is about the social natural relationships, an attempt to pacify the relationship between societies and their natural environment. And it is an idea whose time has come. Next, please. This means that natural and cultural heritage should be recognized, understood, planned, and managed together. This is a first case study, but I don't have time to analyze. Very briefly, I will say it is about built cultural heritage and about how the residents created resilience of their village, promoting their built cultural heritage and mainly a self-organizing self-organization. Next, please. They had put it is the Arkohori village in North Greece, in Macedonia. They established, their goals were to establish a community-based enterprise system. They introduced diversity and redundancy of economic activities to protect and enhance built environment and to promote community building. That is, it is a combination of community building, strong community building, and promotion of built cultural heritage. Next, please. These are some protection and development zones. You see here nature, culture, and community bonding. Next, please. Evolutionary resilience, according to Davudi, offers a new and probably more appropriate framework to describe the nature and processes of agglomerations because of their complex, non-linear, and self-organizing qualities. And the territorial strategy for achieving resilient development in our cohort is inspired by its unique community-based organizational structure and builds upon older patterns, by adding novel elements that mutate and evolve the initial structural and functional organization of the settlement. Next, please. You see here also what is important is that in this perspective, resilience of urban territorial ecosystem is not just their ability to return to its normal. It's the same with cultural heritage or previous state of equilibrium, but rather to change, adapt, and gradually transform in response to stresses and strains. And this is valid also for cultural heritage, but for the territory itself. Next, please.
Stella, sorry to interrupt you. Would you please go to your conclusions because we are running very late?
Yes. Okay. A second case study. I'm sorry, but I have to go out of the ESPON box and go to the European seas. Is the underwater cultural heritage. The underwater cultural heritage can be a real driver for sustainable tourism, and mainly based on a multi-use, on a multiple use of marine space that is UCH tourism driven, UCH tourism and environmental protection. Next, please. Here you see that the first park, the first underwater cultural heritage park of Greece, open to tourists, open to divers, the Peristera Park in the Alonissos Island. It is the first well-organized museum, underwater cultural heritage museum, creating conditions for alternative tourism projects that can contribute to the blue growth and sustainable development, minimizing, of course, threats to the biodiversity and ecosystems. Next, please. My conclusions, dear Simone. We live in an era of tremendous change affecting whole communities and societies, financially, socially, and spatially. The complexity of the world we live in is of non-linear behavior. We face sudden changes, non-linear development, and we have an impossibility of controlling. The COVID-19 pandemic is such a disruptive change or innovation, as perhaps Christensen would say. New planning approaches have emerged: self-organization, adaptive planning and management, co-evolution, evolutionary resilience, evolutionary governance, etc. Next, please. How, under this situation, to bring cultural, natural heritage and sustainable tourism together at regional level? We have to anchor heritage tourism in regional strategies, first of all. We have to balance between economic benefits and pressures. We have to view pressures caused by tourism under the New Deal. This is very important. In general, we have the arsenal now. We have the Green Deal, and we have all the action plan of the Green Deal. We have the new biodiversity strategy, for example, the 2030. We have the arsenal for implementation. the conservation know-how and skills at regional level. This is also very important. Awareness raising and strategic long-term thinking, and if you like, an assemblage and ecosystems strategic long-term thinking. And of course, last but not least, digitalization, ICT uptake. This is a sine qua non condition. Next, please. Here is the arsenal I told you before. It is important that 30% of EU land and 30% of EU seas under legal protection, of which 1/3 will be under strict protection. This is the target. You see, it is really a very ambitious target. And so many other targets about blue and green infrastructure, ecological corridors, and so on. Next, please. Here we should also search for a new role of planners in this world of change. On my opinion, planners should only be change managers, transition managers, social entrepreneur, supporting and guiding. This is the last and my last comment. The various stakeholders to find their positions in the planning process. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. I know this is the biggest challenge and the last hurdle between you and the lunch break. So I will keep my time.
So you have the very hard task to keep people, in attention and not be distracted.
Exactly. So I'll do my best to keep in the time line and briefly go into the presentation. So I will share my screen with you. I hope everybody can see it now. To be precise, our project was about to actually to link all the speakers which have been talking today, actually. And the purpose was to develop a methodology for measuring and assessing carrying capacity for tourism, which goes very much in line what Stella has now presented about the resilience factor of tourist destinations, but also which goes in line with whatever Peter has shown you on the development of tourism and its effects on the economy. And the point was actually that this project has been starting last year, so long before we even talked about the COVID crisis. It was then, of course, kind of switching, and therefore I'm starting off here with the question, okay, why should this really bother us actually? Because things like carrying capacities, over tourism, as Peter has explained also in his presentations, are apparently not something which should touch us very much right now. However, we have to admit, and this is also, I share the statement from Peter Schön on that I think it will not last. I think that tourism destinations are now at a crossroad in terms of looking out for a change, maybe. On the other hand, we know that especially the sector of tourism is extremely path dependent, meaning that if you have an infrastructure in place and if you are depending on cultural heritage, for instance, then of course the character of your tourism will not change that much. This is now explicitly striking also in the light of tourist destination, which we all know very badly now from Austria, for instance, like Ischgl, where of course half of Europe has been infected with COVID, and the character of this tourism, also like tourist destinations like Mallorca, they will not change. The point will be that people will seek out this kind of tourism, and therefore, of course, this decision making is now taking place. Will a tourist destination go on a more sustainable path? Will it face the issues of COVID or climate change or not? And the basis for that is very important, is that you need, of course, to know about your pathways. You need to know about what is actually happening in your region. And here we are talking about tourist destination. And I was very glad that Stella pointed out, of course, that the issue of planning in tourist destination is a very touchy one, because we all know that we are talking here about a territorial granulation, which is far below any planning horizon which we are now talking about, which we are talking about here on Lau level or municipality level in most of the cases. And therefore, sure enough, also the decisions are taken on this very level. And this is to be taken into consideration, that we need to involve, first of all, the local level, meaning also the stakeholders in this process. And we need to orient ourselves on this evidence which is there on this level in order to know our way forward, actually. And in order to identify also the sensitive points in this, as Peter Schön put it quite correctly, sensitive or in this extremely complex tourist and society system, which we need. The method we have developed is exactly meeting all these points. We were starting off, and I'm just briefly going through the capacity of this this tool here. We were starting off with a very common framework of a rather systemic context, meaning that we treat actually the regional context as a given fact, as something like what we call in systems theory the sensitivity of a regional, which is the trait or the qualities of this territory where we have then tourism as an external factor, so to be seen in order to understand better for the causalities and the inflow of tourists and how this affects the system itself. This in combination then leads us to a depicting of these causal chains in the system in itself by indicators, and then on the basis of the messages from these indicators, we can then steer the system and identify the so-called sensitive points, as I said before. So it is clear from the outset that we didn't put forward the suggestion of having a single figure as the steering rod, so to say, for a region, but it is to be embedded in a process which starts first, like I said, with this destination overview, that you need to understand, okay, what are the causal chains between the system as it is and the tourist inflows. So you need to find these causal loops first. You need then to find a way to capture whatever is there. This is the major flaw of any kind of concept which is right now there in terms of sustainable tourism or any other benchmarking tool we know from worldwide tourism and sustainable tourism. Okay, sorry, I'm muted. No. Okay, sorry. Apparently I'm. Can you still hear me?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. So, and the next thing is, of course, that I need to process all this information to identify the impacts, and then in the last step, I can at least assess something like a fictional borderline among which I'm orient myself as a destination, and where I can then predict, okay, in the different dimensions of sustainability, economic, social, environmental, where I can move and where I can then develop myself. So what we did is in the first step we had with the destinations, and this project was applied. It was a targeted analysis project of ESPON, meaning that we had practical stakeholders in the sample, which were 5 destinations in Slovenia and in Italy, and we applied this method directly with these destinations. So this is an applied tool which worked out nicely. So the first step was then to sit together with the stakeholders and draw, as I said, this systemic picture in order to identify causal loops between tourism and the territorial context. It was very important to already see that this was done in spring this year. So the COVID crisis was already taking its tolls and the effects were already now taken into account. For the example here, where we had the cross-border destination of Gorizia, Nova Gorica, where we had our workshop. Then the next step is what I said, is this measurement, and this is depicting, is this identification of indicators and how you can do that. The colleagues from Modul University in Vienna developed a very powerful dashboard on that, where you computed different data sets, on the one hand on the context and on the other hand on tourist flows. The tourist flows were depicted in various ways. You can see here, for instance, heat maps, which were based on Instagram data extractions, where you can see where are hotspots within a certain destination. Here again, Nova Gorica, Gorizia, for instance. We can also then have, for instance, sentiment analysis on the basis of that, in terms of, okay, how do tourists perceive the destination, like in the lower left corner here, like trust, surprise, sadness, and so on and so forth. And you can also do predictions, so to say, or first trend analysis in order to know, okay, what the future might bring here. But you can also then do, of course, in the dashboard, we have fed in all the destinations of Slovenia in this case, and you can do easy comparisons. You can compare over time, so you can produce time series in terms of tourist intensity, for instance, but you can also then look into a combination of the different tourist flows and the context itself. Like, for instance, what we did here in the lower graph, that you can identify the correlation between arrivals and bad places, for instance. And you can then identify with this way, so to say, a fictional curve in comparison, or first of all, over time, but then also with any other destination in the sample to identify, okay, how far am I away from my capacity, and where can I develop in this way along the different indicators which we were using, so to say. So in principle, the concept behind this is this vulnerability concept, which is very well known in the ESPON world and also in the world of territorial development, which then allows to draw this fictional borderline. And it has the clear-cut advantage vis-a-vis any other, let's say, sustainable tourism concept, that it's applicable. It is based on real data which is there and which can be fed in, and it's actually now up and working in the way that everybody can actually feed in the data on this dashboard and can use it as a comparison system. That was already in all briefness what I wanted to tell you. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, of course, feel free to get in touch. Thank you.